let's talk about supplies. First, we're going to talk about paper. There are a gazillion options out there, I know. I'm going to try to help you decide which way you want to go. So I use a lot of different journals. These are fairly inexpensive and you can pick them up locally, which is nice. The quality of the paper in some of these is just so-so for me, but for journaling, it's perfectly fine. For this class, it's perfectly fine. So I use a Strathmore journal. I also really love this Field watercolor journal. This is created with fluid watercolor paper, and this it's good. I really like it. These I can get locally, but I know you can order them as well, and they come in all different sizes. My favorite and what I will be using for class is Arches, and I use cold pressed paper, and I use 140 pound. So the difference in papers, there's cold press, there's hot press, there's rough, there's all these different things. I learned and I use cold press. I've tried to use hot press and it comes out a hot mess. So the thing I'll say is, if you want to mess around, if you're just trying out techniques and you want to have fun, you know, use something inexpensive. It's all good. I do it too. And you can get some really decent, good results. But if you're doing a finished piece, or you know, you want to try some extra techniques, some advanced techniques, this is my suggestion. And I will tell you also, I can get this locally at Michael's. They do sell it. But when you go, or when you go shopping for paper anywhere, there's also an Arches pad that is gummed all around the edges, and they call it a block. It is the exact same paper as this. It's just double the amount cost. This is their paper pad, so there's no gumming. It's just a pad, and I know you can get this online on Amazon for about $11, so it's fairly inexpensive. You get 12 sheets for that. And with Arches, one of the cool things is, if you want to use this to try techniques and things, you can use both sides of the paper. There's nobody that says you can't do it. I do it. So you really can get a lot of use out of this one pad of paper. Another brand is this Strathmore watercolor paper. I did a little test just to show you the difference. This was created on Arches, and I'll bring it a little closer. And this one was created with Strathmore. These are the exact same techniques, but you can see the difference in how they dried, how they came out. This paper doesn't have the same tooth as this, so it all really depends on also what you are used to. So if you've never done watercolor before and you start out on Strathmore and you continue to use Strathmore, you'll probably be way better at it than I am. I'm used to Arches, and so that's what I paint best with. So just something to keep in mind. Like I said, for playing around, for practicing, use whatever, but throughout the class I will be using this one. And please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, let's talk about one of my most favorite things, which is watercolor paint. And for this class, I am going to mostly be using tube paints. So I have lots of different brands. I use lots of different colors. I definitely have my favorites, so I will probably be using most of those for this class, and I'll tell you what they are as I go through the demo. But I'll just explain some of the brands that I use. So this is Cotman. This is by Winsor & Newton. It's what they consider their student grade paint. But don't let that throw you off. It's really great paint. I get really good results from it, so it is good quality, good paint. They also, of course, have their professional line, which comes in a smaller tube and a bigger tube. Not terribly unreasonably priced, and of course, wonderful paint. And then, as you all know, I have a love affair with Daniel Smith, so I definitely use a lot of Daniel Smith colors. And I sometimes use these Core brand watercolors, and I have a couple of other brands, Mission and Holbein, that I use as well. But Winsor Newton, Cotman, and Daniel Smith are my go-to paints. So as far as colors, you really don't need any specific colors. Because we are kind of focusing on galaxy creating, you will need some darker blues and purples, maybe even a black, because when we get to the stars, you'll want your stars to really pop and shine, so you'll just need some darker colors for that. You can also use pan sets. Pan sets are great. I use them also. This is a Winsor Newton set. This is the first set that I ever had, and this is all I had for years. So this is a great set. You can do amazing things with just those colors. And this is a Prima brand. This is their Classics line. And these are great because they are portable, it's all in one place, and you get a really good range of colors. And these are great paints, and they are not terribly expensive. They're actually pretty reasonable. So there you go, that's my spiel on paint. And this watercolor paint doesn't do this to your fingers. This is acrylic paint. I just had a class, so please excuse me. But that's one of the great things about watercolor paint is not a lot of cleanup. Don't have to worry about it drying out because you can just reactivate it with water. If you do use tube paints, you're going to need a palette, and I'll talk more about that. But of course, if you have any questions, I love to talk about paints, so feel free to ask. Okay, so brushes, this is another one where it's really what you're used to. So what I'm going to be using are rounds. That's a brush that has this shape to it. And the main thing I'll say is that you need to have a good selection of size. So the biggest one that I typically use for this type of painting is an 8. And then I have a 6, I have a 4, and I have a 2. You could get away really with getting rid of the 6. If you just had an 8, a 4, and a 2, you would be good to go. These are super cheap kind that you get in, you know, Michael's or some craft store. There's nothing wrong with these brushes as long as they say they're for watercolor. They're great. I use them too. This is a filbert. I don't use the filbert too much. But I have rounds in this exact brand. So, like I said, it's really personal choice. I would just get a decent range and get comfortable with your brushes. If you love them, they'll love you back. Oh, if anybody wants to know, so these are by Pro Art, and art is spelled with an E, and this is their Proline Plus line. I get these on Amazon. They come in a pack of 5, I believe. And these are my workhorses. As you can tell, I use them a lot. We will also, when we start making stars, it might be useful to have a super duper tiny brush. This is a 20/0, which is very tiny. And this helps when you're creating that glow, sparkly effect with your stars. So anything, doesn't matter what brand, just something super tiny. All right, let's move on.